Kathryn Porter's here, independent energy analyst, though, because as you might suspect, not very many days go by before Ed Miliband's coming after you for more money. Very good morning to you, Kathryn. It turns out that Ed Miliband has got his eyes now on a 15% net zero tax on your gas bill, because apparently green levies need to be overhauled because clearly they haven't got enough money.
Well, I think the idea is to move the levies off electricity and onto gas.
Yeah.
The levies need moving away from electricity, but the place for them to go is into taxation, partly because having them on energy bills is extremely regressive, and partly because if they were collected through the Treasury, then there would be proper scrutiny of them, and there would be some oversight to see if there's indeed value for money, which is doubtful.
Well, exactly. But apparently he not only wants to tax us more, he wants to actually move the money so that it can be then channeled into boosting sales of heat pumps, because he hopes that people will get fed up of paying so much money for their gas bill that heat pumps might look like a cheaper option. But whenever I talk to anybody about heat pumps, they're certainly not a cheaper option.
No, they're not. And I mean, this whole idea really makes no sense. We also had reports over the weekend that the grants available for heat pumps are going to be reduced as part of the spending review. So at the very moment he's talking about making gas more expensive to try and get people onto heat pumps, those heat pumps will become a lot more expensive. And the people who will suffer from all of this are the people in fuel poverty who are already making choices between heating and eating. There'll be far more people caught in that trap, not able to afford a heat pump and not able to afford the gas to heat their homes. And this is no joke. Until the ONS stopped publishing these data a couple of years ago, we were seeing on average 6,000 to 8,000 people dying as a result of fuel poverty every winter, which is a pretty disgraceful statistic.
It really is.
And it's kind of convenient that they've stopped reporting on these data, because I'm pretty sure those numbers will have gone up since then.
Yeah, I'm sure, particularly over the past winter when, you know, it wasn't as cold as it could have been, but it was certainly chilly on some of the weeks that we had, and many people just not being able to afford to pay the bill for fear, or not to put the electricity on for fear of how much the bill would be.
Exactly, and so this move will harm the most vulnerable people in society. And even if it was successful, and this is the part that's really pernicious about this, if it was successful in moving some people off gas, that would mean that the people left would have an even larger burden to pay. So the poorest would end up paying far more than their fair share of these levies and carbon taxes, and that's just simply unfair.
Right. And one of the things that I find particularly disingenuous about the conversations around heat pumps, particularly when they're coming from, you know, sort of protagonists who want you to get one, is they never tell you about the ongoing cost. You know, they sort of make out that if you put one of these things in, oh, it's a very, very, very good system, it's all integrated, it's kind of, you know, solid state, it works on its own, you don't have to do anything to it once it's in, when in fact the maintenance of it is quite expensive. The amount of digging and sort of removing of things in your house that you have to do is very disruptive. You have to put in new radiators, generally speaking. You sometimes have to put in new pipes. You might have to completely redo, you know, your entire heating system. You might have to dig something up in the garden. You know, it's very, very expensive and disruptive.
Yeah, and you might need to upgrade your insulation because you're moving from high-grade heat with your boiler to low-grade heat with a heat pump. And a lot of people don't use their heat pumps correctly. Really, you need to keep the heat pump on all the time, rather than just at the times that you need the heating. So quite often, the most efficient thing to do is to heat your house when you're not in it, which is counterintuitive. These are not good systems. And, you know, when people say, oh, you know, they work really well in cold weather, just look at Scandinavia. People in Scandinavia usually have two forms of heating in their homes, and more people have a wood-burning stove than have a heat pump. So there's a lot of misinformation being given to people around heat pumps, and they're just not going to work for everybody. And in fact, there'll be lots of people for whom they don't work at all. And the cost of that upfront installation and ongoing maintenance are both significant barriers.
Yeah, thousands of pounds. Well, we call it propaganda. Might as well call it what it is. Let's have a look at Ed Miliband talking about reducing the cost of your energy. This is from last year.
We set that out for 2030. It was an independent set of modelling that said that bills could go down by up to £300. And what's important, Susanna, is that the report I referred to last week from the energy system operator confirms that not only is our target achievable, but it will lead to lower costs of electricity.
So in 6 years' time, our bills will go down by £300, how much are they going to have gone up by that point?
An answer came there none. So this is the famous £300 that we'd all be better off promise that came in sort of June, back end of June, early part of July last year, which as the year went on sort of unravelled to the point where not only was it possibly £300 over the life of your heat pump, but possibly £300 by 2030, and then eventually they just stopped talking about it altogether.
Well, what was really dishonest about all of that as well is the reference price that they used was one of the highest prices. The price had already come down about £300 by the time that report was published, just because gas prices fell. So the whole thing was completely dishonest right from the outset. And all I can really say is that by 2030, let's hope that this current Energy Secretary is no longer in post.
Yes. Very good to hear. One final story for you today. Apparently Wes Streeting wanted to make all NHS ambulances 100% electric. I mean, you think he might have other things to fix in the NHS, like, you know, waiting times, you know, cancer detection rates, you know, the time it takes for you to go from one operation to the next specialist, and all of that. Maybe hospital beds, we'll put a few more of those in, maybe even repair some of the hospitals. But no, let's all make sure that we don't have any diesel ambulances. I mean, for heaven's sake, he's now going to have to abandon it because it's too expensive.
It's not just too expensive. There are large parts of the country where it simply won't work. And, you know, anybody who's had a taxi to go any long distance that was electric and then asked, oh, please, can you put the air conditioning on? And the taxi driver goes, oh, no, sorry, I can't do that because the battery might run out. Right. I mean, they know that this is really going to be unsuitable. Could an ambulance go a whole shift on one charge? What happens if they're having to be stuck waiting to offload their patients at a hospital and wanting to have heating or run life-saving equipment in the back? You know, it just seems completely impractical, and I cannot believe that our ambulance service is making a material contribution to climate change. I think they really need to sort out their priorities here. So
what you're saying is you might have an ambulance, but they couldn't put the blue light on because it might drain the battery.
Well, or they can't, you know, have the ventilator or whatever. Yeah. You know, your electric heart machines won't work because they might drain. I mean, it's just ridiculous.
Defibrillator, yeah, absolutely right.
Yeah, I'd be asking, have they done a risk assessment to look at what would be the potential harm to patients from this sort of change? Because I really can't see that the possible patient harm is justified based on the potential climate impact.
No, absolutely right. Ridiculous. Kathryn Porter, great to see you. Thank you very much indeed. Independent energy analyst.